Welcome to Theo's Thoughts, the podcast about pretty much anything and everything, helping you achieve success, whether that be self-improvement, reaching your dreams, whatever it is, that is what this podcast is for. Today's episode is striving for independence. Independence is something I've been thinking a lot about for a number of months, if not over a year. It's something we have in the back of our mind that is important to achieve as an adult. You want to be independent. That can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people, but it's something we all do think about, even on a subconscious level. When we're young, when we're kids and we're little, so many of us have always said, I can't wait until I'm finally an adult. I can't wait until I'm 18 and I can just do whatever I want to do. We want to be in control of making our own decisions. We want to be in control of our life choices, what we go to, what we don't go to, who we see. I mean, even our education, right? So many of us don't like school, yet we're forced to be in school for the majority of our lives. And it's not fun. The moment that you're an adult, you think, no, this is it, easy. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to go wherever I want, live the life that I really want to live. Once we reach adulthood, we realise that's not really the case. That's one of the reasons I've been thinking about what is independence, right? And here's what it means to me. It means doing things for yourself, obviously. If you're independent, that means you're not really relying on people to do things for you. When you're a child, obviously you don't go shopping by yourself, you go with parents. Most of us don't have to cook our own meals 3 times a day. We don't have to drive ourselves places. We're not responsible for our time management unless it's like homework. So really, that's the main thing that independence means to me, is just being able to do things for yourself. I think it can also really mean living alone, because obviously if you are living with somebody, you are cohabitating, right? It means you are having to make joint decisions with somebody. You're living a joint life, even if it's just platonic, even if it's just flatmates, housemates, even roommates. You're having to live with them and make decisions with them. So it's not really being totally independent. You don't get that feeling until you've lived alone. One of the more nuanced things about independence, I think, is actually problem solving. Going back to the idea of when you're a kid, it's saying, well, I'm making my own decisions. I can't wait till I make my own decisions. That also means when you're faced with a problem, you have to try and figure it out. There might not be somebody you can ask. There might not be somebody that can help you make that decision. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself, because at the end of the day, it is your life. You are the one responsible for it. The last thing, I think it really means being in control. Being independent means that you are responsible for your life, that you are doing what you want to do, and you are finally in control of your lifestyle. No matter how good or bad it is, you are the one that is responsible for it and in control of making any changes. No matter how big or small those changes might be, you're the one in control of making those choices. Nobody can make them for you. The biggest thing about independence is really, it's a crucial step for finding yourself. One of the books that I have read in the past, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's about being independent before being interdependent. Meaning you can't build a joint life with somebody if you've never had to be independent first. Because if something happens to that other person, or you're suddenly left on your own, you're not going to know how to handle it. You're not going to know what you need to do. So it really is important as early on in your life, or as early on in your adult life, that you can actually practice and exercise that independence. Do things for yourself, build your life that you're happy with it. So if we know that we should be independent, and if we know that that is an important part of life, how do we actually go about becoming independent? The first thing that I really think about when it comes to independence is finances. And it shouldn't be that important, but that's where most of us end up relying on other people. If you go get a job, yes, you're independent, as in you are getting a job, but you're relying on that job obviously to bring in money. From that job, you know how much money you have to go do something. You might rely on somebody else in order to be able to finance something bigger. You might rely on parents, you might rely on siblings, you might rely on banks. Whatever it is, it's easier to feel independent if you are in control of your own finances and you can fund everything that you want to fund. That's not really possible when you're starting out in adulthood. Especially at the moment with cost of living crisis, it's not something that's that achievable. You know, people used to be able to get a job and be able to buy a house in their 20s. Yes, they would get a mortgage, but even that is now proving really, really difficult for people. And not being able to get a house means you don't get that experience of living alone, which is the first thing I spoke about. And not being able to live alone means you don't really get that feeling of independence. If you are still living with your parents, it can feel as though you're still a child. You'll be flitting between the two lifestyles. One where you're not really sure what's for dinner, your parents will still take care of you. It's like almost independence, it's almost like house sharing, but it still will leave that void of feeling really independent, like you're making your life your own, because you are still relying on your parents' home in order to have a roof over your head. Let me be clear, that's not a bad thing. That seems to just be how it is for most of us now. And that's all right. That's just how it is. So we have to figure out other ways to exercise that independence so that we can feel like we're progressing in life, so that we can feel like we're making a difference. You should always try to look at the things that you can control first. And I would say the first thing you can control is your time. Nobody else can dictate what you should do with your time. If you decide to get a job, you can decide which hours you're going to work in that job. If you're not happy with it, don't apply for it. Yes, there may be limits where you have to compromise, but that's still your choice to make. You are free to decide how you want to use your time. Now, planning your time doesn't always mean just being super productive. And I think a lot of us feel like in order to be successful, we have to use as much of our time as possible doing things that are classed as productive. And that just really quickly leads to burnout. So planning your time means really making sure that there is enough of a break from work. So yes, have that time where you're working and bringing in money. Have that time where you're working on a side project. Make sure you have some family time. Make sure you have time just for hobbies. And make sure when you're planning your time that you're not planning like down to the minute. I've tried it, I've been there, where I felt like if I don't plan my time properly, it's inefficient. I'm gonna waste time, I'm not being disciplined enough with myself. And all it leads to is additional stress. Things happen on a day-to-day basis that you won't be able to predict a week in advance. So when you're planning your time, the same way that you do like a financial budget, make sure that you're giving yourself plenty of time. So if you work a job that's 9 till 5, you've got to consider that you've got to get there. So maybe you'd actually say your job sort of starts from 8:30 till 5:30. But then are there days that you work overtime? Are there days that you've had to stay? Maybe you'd say, okay, 8 till 6. That's going to be my sort of working hours. Yet you probably don't get paid 8 till 9 and 5 till 6, but it means you're not going to try and fit something in between 5 and 6 or 8 and 9. Let's say like you wanted to add in some exercise into your morning. You might say, oh, okay, well, if I get up at 6, then I could maybe exercise, then I could make breakfast, then I could go get ready, and I'd still be done by 8:30. That might sound great theoretically, but it also might not work. Firstly, you might not be able to get up at 6, and even if you do get up at 6, you really might not want to exercise. You might not feel great. Yes, you can push yourself, but there's always a limit to why you should do something, right? At the end of the day, it's your life. If you really don't want to jump out of bed and start exercising straight away, that's your prerogative. You can do that, and nobody should tell you otherwise. if you really, really want to get fit, if you really, really want to, let's say you have a time limit till you need to go and run a marathon, fine. Then you might have to be really disciplined and say, no, I have to make sure I'm exercising every day, and the only time I can do that is in the morning. But for the rest of us who just have generic goals, yes, you might want to exercise more, but it just might not work out for you at 6 a.m, and that's fine. It's better to be realistic and say, actually, I need to be ready for work by 8 o'clock. So if I need to have breakfast, how long should I give myself? Obviously, we're more slow when we're tired. So yeah, it might only take you 10 minutes normally to whisk something up in the kitchen, but first thing in the morning, it might take you 20 minutes. Then you've got to factor in that you have to clear up. Most of us don't time ourselves when we're doing that. So planning your time really does mean just giving yourself enough time, not putting too much pressure on yourself, but that is the very first step in being independent, because you are making those choices for your life. The second slightly more different thing about being independent is taking responsibility. It's a word that I've heard a lot in terms of, you need to be accountable for your decisions. And yes, you do. I think most of us are. We understand when it's our choice and we've done something, but it is an element to be mindful of, which is when you're trying to be independent, you have to take responsibility for your actions. You have to understand that although we're completely free to make the choices we want to make, you are not free to choose the consequences. You don't know what's going to happen. You can predict, there's obviously going to be probability involved, but you don't know for a fact what's going to happen. And that's where a lot of people, I would say, just get a little bit down in themselves. They get upset, they get frustrated, because it's just easier to blame the circumstances, it's easier to blame other people and saying, yeah, but actually, I still chose this. Okay, let's take, for example, you book a restaurant with friends, right? And you get there and it's just a lot more expensive than you thought. That could then mess up with your weekly budget or whatever. And it's easier to blame, say, well, my friend chose this restaurant, I would have never chosen there. Or, well, how was I supposed to know that it was going to be that much? These might sound like obvious things, and I'm sorry if it's not the best example, but in terms of saying, well, my friend picked there, you're free to say, look, actually, I can't afford there. I understand it's unpleasant because we're trying to save face. We don't really want to put our financial situation out there, but you are free to suggest somewhere else. Or if you don't want to say to your friends, look, that's just a little bit out of my budget at the moment, you can just say, I don't want to go there. It's as simple as that. You don't have to justify anything. It's the best part about being an adult. You can just say, no, I don't want to. And that is good enough. People might be like, why? This is great. I just don't want to. I'd rather go to this place. If they say, no, we are going to this place, that's all right. We can arrange to meet up another time. That's the part about being responsible. You know your limits. You know what you can and you can't do and what you should and you shouldn't do. So if you end up going to a place and it's more expensive than you thought and you didn't know, well, you could have checked online to see if you can see the prices. If there weren't any prices online, then that is a risk that you're willing to take as such. And taking responsibility means, well, I wasn't sure I could afford it and this is now where I'm at, so I'll just have to change something that I do next week to compensate for that loss in that current week. The best part for me about being responsible is actually you just feel more in control, which again goes back to one of the earlier points. What is independence? It's being in control. By taking responsibility, you're saying, yeah, okay, I might have made a mistake, but then it also means, well, no, I've made the right decision in other areas. It means that you are just in control of your life. You're not looking to blame anybody else, because the moment that you blame somebody else, you then become a victim, and that then means you're out of control. That's not what we want. You're not going to feel great about yourself if you're looking at blaming other people. to put it frankly. It just won't make you feel good. It might feel better in a moment than saying, oh yeah, actually I made a mistake, but that won't sit for long. And you'll become frustrated and you might become angry. It's just better to be honest with yourself and just understand, this was my decision, this is where I'm at. As I mentioned earlier, one of the other big parts of being independent is finances. It's frustrating, but I've always thought a big part of independence is that financial freedom. And along with responsibility and planning your time, it means planning your money. So when you have your income set, and it might not be a huge income in terms of not having to think about how much you spend, you're going to have to budget. You're going to have to plan how much you can put aside for food every week, how much is rent, how much is the mortgage, how much are the bills, how much you want to put away for hobbies, entertainment, and then obviously how much you want to put away for savings in case things go wrong. All of that falls into being independent with your finances. You are in control of your pot of money. However big or small it is, you are in control of it. From there, you can see what you can do. There's also a lot of support out there financially if you're struggling. Getting that financial help obviously should then increase that pot a little bit or make it a little bit less restrictive. Say, for example, with like energy bills. If you're struggling to make payments, you can contact your energy provider, you can contact your council, you can get some advice about how to manage it and see what support they can offer. That's again that part about being independent, which is sort of what I want to get to, is it doesn't mean dealing with things completely alone. Most of us, I think, feel like it is. You have to be alone in order to be independent, right? It means doing things by yourself, for yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that. And if you're struggling with something, it is completely okay to ask for help, and that doesn't really mean you're not being independent. You are actually problem solving, you are seeking help, and then you are making decisions from that advice. On that topic of sort of meeting people and seeking help, you can also really try and meet people through different circumstances, and I found that great. So being more independent for me, I've started doing some additional hobbies, and in those hobbies I've met more people, and you find yourself through that. You find people that actually become your lifelong friends. You meet people who might mention something that they've gone through that you relate to, and actually you get advice from them, or you see how they've managed to go through something. We're all learning. Every single day we are learning and growing and figuring things out, and it's helpful to see how other people figure it out. That doesn't mean you're not being independent. If you weren't independent, it would mean that you go to somebody with your problem and you say, you figure it out, I don't know what to do. And I don't want to know. Actually, I suppose that's the thing. If you're dependent, it's like a child going to their parents saying, I'm hungry. Being independent is, I'm hungry, now I need to figure out how I can get some food on the plate. Does that mean ordering food from a takeaway? Does it mean going shopping and then cooking? Whatever it means, you are finding a solution to that problem. You're not just expecting somebody else to deal with it for you. Getting support, we all need it. We're not meant to just go through life alone and figure it all out by ourselves. It wouldn't work. We would never get anywhere. The final point about actually becoming independent means staying true to your morals and values. When we're younger, that's our opportunity to really figure out who we are. Don't get me wrong, it still goes on through adulthood, but I think being independent really means staying strong with who you are. If something matters to you, to stay focused on that. That opinion, that belief might change with time, but you don't want to lose yourself because of what other people are doing. If you find something right or wrong. So take, for example, going and buying free range food, whether it be meat or eggs, whatever it is. You're trying to support farmers who are looking after their animals. then you might see that other people are saying, oh no, it's a waste of money, it's a waste of this, it's not worth doing that, it's just bad financial planning. That may be true for them, but that doesn't mean it's true for you. For you, it might mean, actually, no, this is where I would rather put my money. The same way, if somebody tries to make you feel guilty for not buying free range, that's not really your problem. You are buying because of how you feel about it. If you're saying, well, no, I can't afford that, I need to feed more people and my budget doesn't extend to buying that quality of meat or animals that are looked after in that kind of way, I just can't do it, you shouldn't feel bad about that. That's okay. You are being responsible, which is a sign of independence. You're taking control. You're being careful with your finances. You're planning everything. That's all being independent. And then the final bit is just staying true to your morals and values. What good would it be if you say, okay, I'm going to spend more money, but have less food, and then we're going to go hungry? If that is what would make you feel better, go for it. If it's not, if you know that you need to feed people, including yourself, that's the bigger value, right? I think a lot of us struggle with really actually being independent because of feeling like you have to do it alone or having outside influences. It's really difficult. We neglect our needs in order to strive for success. And along the way, I feel like the more that time passes, the more confused we get. And that's when you become dependent on other people because you can't make decisions for yourself anymore. Everything is confusing and complicated. When we're confused, it's difficult to make decisions. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know how things are going, and it's difficult to be independent in those circumstances. So if you get into those moments of confusion, just try and go back to those steps we mentioned earlier. What does it actually mean to be independent? You know what you really believe in. You know how to be in control of your time. You know how to take responsibility. So if you need to start from scratch with decision making, do so. Seek support and guidance, but you are the one in control of your decisions. So just hold on to that fact. Being independent is liberating. It's freeing because we can just do what we want, when we want. We are in control of our lives. We can choose what we do, what we don't do. You can start a hobby and you can drop it a month later. You can decide this isn't worth it at all for me. You can say, I want this job, I don't want this job. I'm going to ask for a raise. You're not waiting for people to dictate what your life is going to be like. You are in control of your life and you can turn it into whatever you want. You just have to have that drive and determination to stay true to who you are and focus on the decisions that you are making. That's all independence is, I suppose. After all this, I guess it really is just independence means being able to make decisions for yourself. Being able to say, this is what works for me and this is working for my life at the moment. That might change and that's fine. I can change my mind. I hope you found this helpful. I hope it's been interesting enough. I know it seems like a boring topic, but I think in order to achieve our goals, you just have to be independent, and it's good to have a very clear picture and concise picture, to be fair, of what independence really is. And I hope that this episode has helped with that, and I hope you'll join me for the next episode.